uh, and I hope and expect everybody's counting on the Metro Green Line Extension Corridor Management Committee, because that's what this is. Welcome. Um, we're gonna have a big update, a lot of slides that were sent out in advance, but I should always say, which I know every year and a half we're all really good at, if you're not speaking, we're probably best to mute yourself. We're gonna have an opportunity to get updates, but if they're public here and you would like to submit any comments, please feel free to email Sophia Guinness, Ginis, at metrotransit.org. And any of those comments before Friday the 10th will be posted on our website. Also, we're going to be recording today's session, so you can always view it later. With that, I'll ask members to introduce themselves by organization or municipality, and I will just start by calling out Met Council. So anybody associated who are members of Met Council, and I see a few here, you can call out your name, introduce yourself.
I'll start at Molly Cummings. I represent District 5, Hopkins, Edina, Richfield, and Bloomington, and I'm vice chair of the Met Council.
Great. Anybody else from Met Council here? Other than myself, and I know we have quite a bit of staff. How about Hennepin County?
Good morning, Chair and everyone. This is Hennepin County Commissioner Chris Latondras, District 6. Represent Edina, Hopkins, Minnetonka, Northern Eden Prairie, and 12 communities around Lake Minnetonka. And it's been fun to see the progress here. I live about a quarter mile from the Excelsior Bridge, that huge counterbalanced structure. It's an engineering marvel, and it's fun to see the progress.
Great. Welcome, Chris.
Debbie Gotel, Hennepin County District 5. Bloomington, Richfield, and Eden Prairie. I just got to do a tour not long ago to part of the Southwest Light Rail, and I'll get the second part of the tour on the upper leg of Southwest Light Rail here in September. So I just want to thank staff for making that possible. It was great to see the progress.
Hey, Debbie. Anyone else from Hennepin County? How about Eden Prairie? All right, Eden Prairie. Minnetonka?
Good morning. I'm Brad Wiersom, Mayor of Minnetonka, and it's good to be together again. And the progress on Southwest Light Rail is noteworthy, and best wishes.
Thanks, Mayor. Hopkins?
Good morning, Chair. This is Jason Gadd, Mayor of Hopkins, and yes, I agree with the progress. It was exciting to see the new rails actually go in the Hopkins. I see that we got to talk a little bit about that with some pictures that are coming out. But I also agree with Commissioner Latondras with the bridge over Excelsior. That is quite the engineering feat to see come together.
It's amazing. Thanks, Brad. St. Louis Park.
Jake Spano, Mayor in St. Louis Park. I'd love to, echo what others have said. The other thing I could do is I could go the other way and just say, like, we've always been markedly impressed with this project from the very beginning.
It's true.
But of course, it's not true. So I'll stick with what Jason and Brad said. We're thrilled to see the project progress. Obviously, everyone, I'm sure, shares the desire to move it along as fast as possible.
Definitely. Minneapolis. All right, Minneapolis. How about Edina?
Edina's here, Mr. Chair. I could represent Eden Prairie too, I suppose, in a pinch. Maybe Minneapolis, backing up both of them. I was thinking as we were sitting here, I've been involved in this since Peter Bell was chair of the Met Council, and I think it was Gail Dorfman who said to me, "You better sit on this as Edina. The line's going to go by Edina in several places," and I had been doing regional transportation work, so It's an oddity, I suppose, that there's someone on the corridor management committee team that doesn't have the line going through their town, but here I am and have been pleased to serve all these years on this committee, and really look forward to having this project completed. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. And it goes without saying, you're such an important regional voice with the many roles you play. So it's really great that you've been part of this this CMC committee. And of course, Edina is important stop, even though it's not direct. Okay, we also have MnDOT.
Good morning. I'm Mike Barnes, MnDOT's Metro District Engineer.
Hey, Mike. Great. Anybody here from Met Transit? Well, we know those folks, so we can speak for them. How about the Community Advisory Committee? Anybody from the CAC? How about the BAC, the Business Advisory Committee?
Good morning. My name is Dan Duffy. Glad to see everybody this morning. I'm co-chair of the Business Advisory Committee, and I've been involved in this project since 2002, first representing Twin West Chamber of Commerce. So I'm pleased to see all the progress on this, and I want to thank Jim and the staff for giving us a tour recently on the project. It's great to see all the progress.
Great, thanks, Dan. Glad you could be with us today. Did I miss any members who didn't introduce themselves? This is your opportunity. Okay, well then let's jump into the agenda. We have minutes that were sent out yesterday for review. If there are any edits or any corrections, please let us know now. Staff can make that correction. And if there aren't any, I would entertain a motion in a second to approve the minutes.
Move approval.
Thanks. Jim, any second?
Second.
Second.
Okay.
Lovely. Great. Okay, we've had a motion, a second, and Dawn Hoffner is here and will call the roll. Dawn?
Councilmember Cummings,
Aye.
Commissioner Latendresse,
Aye.
Commissioner Gotel,
Aye.
Mayor Hovland,
Aye.
Mayor God,
Aye.
Mayor Wiersum,
Aye.
Mayor Spano,
Can't hear you, Jake.
Mayor
Uh,
Spano,
I'm here.
Oh,
Mike
Can you hear
Barnes.
me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Aye.
Dan Duffy,
Aye.
Dan Scharzeli.
Aye. So the minutes are approved. Well, let's get into today's agenda. We're going to get a project update. We'll have time to spend about our success and our challenges with the DBE and workforce update, and then spend a little time on communications and outreach. And certainly, everybody's comments and thoughts along the way would be very welcome. I'm going to just touch on a couple of high points, and I think Mayor Gadd referred to it. We really did hit a milestone with this 50% completion by laying some actual track, and what a better place to do it than right there in Hopkins. So there's a picture in the packet that really shows that station and true rail actually on the ground. And maybe if we were building a building, we would top it off with a flag, but this is a 14 miles chance away, and laying track is a really critical moment. I don't know if Mayor, you did share your thoughts about the excitement that it's in Hopkins, but any other comments would be welcome.
Well, I appreciate that, Chair. And yeah, it was quite the milestone. And I know it's continuing on as we're seeing some street closures as the actual rail is being pulled across 11th Avenue and 5th Avenue. So I think the public is seeing that there is changes and the progress going. So that's good to see.
Yeah, anybody else have any comments? I know Commissioner Latondras, you described all the construction that is either underway or already built, and Hopkins is no exception. So it's great to see the benefits, even though the project is only halfway built.
Yeah, Chair Zelli, that's exactly right. And I think it's marvelous not only to see, literal rails going in the ground, tunnels being dug, bridges and structures rising up out of the ground, but the amazing amount of redevelopment that is already happening along this line, even before it's open and operational. This project is already transforming our region.
Thanks for that. Maybe on slide 4, if we can advance, there's a picture of maybe the next slide. It shows a picture of a pretty exciting moment last week where we have the benefit of our U.S. Senator, Tina Smith, who is chair of the subcommittee of transit and housing kind of oversight as part of the overall banking and urban affairs committee. And for her to have a field hearing, first time there's been a field hearing for that committee in 7 years. And of course, to have the administrator, Nuria Fernandez, to be there to testify and then ultimately to have some tours was really a great opportunity for us in Minnesota and for this project. We had a number of great comments about the transit needs in Minnesota. We had Commissioner Fernando testified, as well as myself and others. In addition to Administrator Fernandez, we had Kelly Brookins, who's the regional Region 5 administrator, to be with us. And, this is a picture of us at the Royalston Avenue Farmers Market. And, it was really great to show, frankly, not just the administrator, but our own senator, the kind of the urban changes that are happening, even, right there in Minneapolis, the Root District, and how that station at Royalston now will become the real gateway. So there's changes to our city and the benefits of transit, as Commissioner Latondras was saying, that we're seeing already, and likewise along the farmers market area, which is where they're pointing. I don't know why staff found the one picture where everybody's wearing a mask except me, so I will talk to Jim later about that. But anyway, it really was an exciting day. We went on and had a visit with the Lake Street station. That'll be really an important benefit for the Orange Line. Lake Street and 35W, which is nearing completion. The Orange Line, of course, is opening later this year. I don't know if anybody else who was there that day. I know there's a few who might want to comment, but it was really great publicity and, frankly, a shot of confidence, particularly from having our federal officials say they really believe in this project. Well, maybe I'm the only one. I can make it up, but actually there was great comments, and I would just mention, and it really segues to another issue about the challenges with this project. The media was there at Royalston, asked both the senator and the administrator Fernandez, with cost overruns, are they losing confidence in this project? And she really said, look, there's complicated projects, big projects around the country that have experienced unforeseen conditions, and that is something that is not unusual. And that no, they have great confidence in the team, Minnesota, and she really saw the benefit of this project. So it was kind of great to have a voice of confidence, and I was really able to say, although the sound clip says we don't know what the full cost is, and we don't know really what the opening date is. And what the sound clip didn't maybe express was the fact that this is the largest public works project. It's also the most complicated, and that we're in the process of working with the contractor to resequence this project to ensure that we're not going to have even larger delays. So keeping a handle on costs, which the project team is really being very mindful in working to actually nail down the best possible outcome. So rather than having the project being built before the Kenilworth Tunnel challenges with the secant wall and the corridor protection barrier, which were the two elements that have caused some cost increases. We're really being smart about like how can we ensure that those don't cause unnecessary delays. And so the reason we don't know the full cost yet is because we're very much in process to determine what that is. And we're not going to be negotiating publicly to ensure that we get the best possible deal and have this line operating at the soonest possible date. So those are the two issues we really, I feel very confident that the team is taking the right approach with the right consultants to get to the best possible outcome. So there's no better way to then introduce the person who's at the front line, Jim Alexander, to kind of give us an update and answer questions and get into exactly kind of where are we with this with the project. So Jim, I'll hand it off to you.
Before you do that, Mr. Chair, this is Jim Hovland. Just a quick
Sure,
question
yeah.
for you. Was there any discussion about the Kenilworth corridor with the FTA administrator, and did she express concern over that issue at all?
No, I actually talked to her both privately and then in public, both about the corridor protection. You know, she, you know, having operated transit, operations herself in California and elsewhere, she was been at the FDA before, and she has specific questions about, you know, how are we doing with the freight railroads, because she's knows that that can be challenging. And she knows also about when you go underground, that's when you see unforeseen conditions. So she is actually very aware, as is our regional director, Kelly Brookins, of what we're doing, how we're approaching the Kenilworth with the secant walls and abundance of caution to ensure that we're doing the right thing. So she's said both. In questioning me, you know, what did I think? And then I asked her, what did she think? And she says, no, you're doing the right thing, and we're tracking what you're doing with their staff. So she feels, and she's been informed. So it's, I think that was gratifying that they weren't showing any alarm or concern.
Yeah, that's very reassuring to have somebody there that's been through this before, in her native state of California. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. Any other questions or thoughts first before we start? I don't want to cut it off. All right, Jim, let's hear about the project.
All right, Mr. Chair, Jim Alexander, Project Director for Southwest LRT. So Jason, if you can advance the slide. So I have a number of slides as usual to talk about construction, mainly civil construction. And, I just want to note that we're, this is not just a Twin Cities project, but this affects the whole state. We have, there's 64 of the 87 counties within the state that someone's bringing home a paycheck from this project, and that's significant. And we like to see that spread. It's very important that that be known, because it does spread widely here. So we'll start out at the west like I typically do, and this is Southwest Station. This is the parking ramp that contractor is building. London McCrossan Joint Venture is a civil contractor, and most of the structure is now in place. There's still a lot of finish work that needs to be done, and a waiting area that you kind of see the semblance of that off to the left there in the background that is being built right now. Very challenging site. We got a lot of piles, still more piles to do. On the south side of this ramp, once we get the waiting area put in place, we'll have a temporary waiting facility that gets taken out, and we'll continue to build structure for the access into the ramp there. Next slide, Jason. So this is our first major bridge, Prairie Center Drive Bridge. And you see the semblance of rail starting to happen on here. This is what's called a direct fixation track, where where the track will be set on concrete blocks, if you can see there. And so that's getting well underway here. Next slide, please. Some artwork that actually was funded by the city of Eden Prairie for our Valley View LRT bridge, looking nice there as we progress across the Valley View interchange there over to into 212, which have a couple of slides on that as well. Next slide, please. This is another bridge we have over a Flying Cloud, the 9 Mile Creek, and LRT bridge going over there. They're essentially getting the finishing touches on that structure itself, and we'll look to have some rail being placed on that later this year. Next slide, please. So this is one of our earlier stations that was that has been mostly constructed, Golden Valley Station, and you can see off in the distance as we head over to City West, we have essentially a piled bridge structure that takes us over to Shady Oak and over 212. The next slide there, Jason, you can see some 10 feet high steel beams that were put in place earlier this summer. Quite an event. Appreciate the partnership we have with MnDOT closing roadways and making that all happen. We had to close 212 for about a week to get these beams put in place, and so that structure is starting to take some shape with getting deck work done on it. Next slide, please. So this is our tunnel that goes under Trunk Highway 62. Nearly complete for the structure itself. This is looking northward. You can see the travel lanes. We've shifted the travel lanes a couple of times to accommodate the construction. We'll eventually be shifting the lanes back toward us in the image there for the final layout for the travel lanes, and work will continue inside the tunnel itself. Next slide, please. This is progressing just north of the Opus area, where we have a roadway bridge for Smetana Road that you can kind of see off to the left there, and down below where that crane is sitting, that's where the LRT is going to be going through. So we'll eventually have another bridge over this area called for the Feltel Road, and then we'll embark on one of our our longest bridge that heads over to Shady Oak Station. Next slide, please. And that's this structure here. You can see most of the piers are in place. This is going over the Bass Lake Spur freight rail line, and starting to putting some beams on this structure. Next slide, please. So Shady Oak Station in Hopkins, that structure is taking some good shape there. Next slide, please. Excelsior Bridge, this is that Commissioner Latondras had spoken about. This is probably the premier bridge on the project. We have about a 400-foot span that goes over Excelsior and the railroad. And I know it's been a challenge for folks with us closing the roadway through here. We hope to have that westbound traffic opened up later this fall. Still have a few segments left to do on this piece to get to that point. Next slide, please. This is Blake Road. One of the pedestrian tunnels we're building off in the distance is where the contractor is working right now with the support of excavation and building that east segment of the tunnel itself, and kind of vision that eventually we'll have freight rail right next to this structure, this tunnel structure off to the right, and then LRT will be further off to the right where you can see the freight rail tracks today. Next slide, please. That's Louisiana area. So we've finished pedestrian and freight bridges over this roadway, and we're currently building the LRT bridge work. A lot of soft soils in here, and so we have a lot of piles to support that structure as we get our reach over Louisiana, and this will land into the station it's just south of the freight rail tracks in St. Louis Park. Next slide, please. So it's the Kenilworth Tunnel. referring to. So I actually just stopped in to get a little snapshot of things, and work is progressing. The contractor is starting to put in rebar and waterproofing, and so that that work is really getting underway. We have been challenged with this construction, as we've been talking about in the past. We're currently doing some what's called a jet grouting to make sure that we have things sealed around these sheet piles you see on either side. This is the support excavation. The sheet piles get installed before the contractor can build the tunnel. And so that jet grouting work is underway right now. We do anticipate that we'll be closing Cedar Lake Parkway for about a 2-week closure beginning on the September 20th. And we'll look to have that wrapped up before the marathon occurs later that weekend on the 3rd, I believe, of October. And so we're starting to see some production on this, and we're working closely with the contractor to get this work really fully underway. We've had some challenges, frankly, with the secant and had to resequence because of the secant wall that I've talked about in the past. But I think we're starting to see some good production here. Next slide. So this is Cedar Lake Channel between Cedar Lake and Lake of the Isles, just north of the tunnel area, and the contractor's building the LRT bridge. You can see off to the right, the freight bridge was built last year, and off to the left is the existing pedestrian bridge that will be used for access for the contractor. Eventually that'll be taken out, and we'll be building a pedestrian bridge to cross that channel. Next slide, please. So 21st Street Station is starting to take some good shape there, just north of that channel area. Next slide, please. This is the corridor protection. You know, all things is kind of, it seems a little underwhelming in terms of what this looks like, but this was quite an endeavor to get this change order in place. And now the contractor is installing the drilled shafts, which there's over 400 of them. And this 10-foot high wall, at least on the freight rail side, is starting to take some shape as we look under. This is just under I-94 here. Next slide, please. So this is up in the Glenwood area. You see off to the distance, that's the west abutment for the Glenwood Avenue Bridge and retaining walls. And in the middle there is where LRT will be coming out of the freight corridor and heading up to the Royalston area. And the contractor is currently working on the east abutment area for the Glenwood Bridge. We'll eventually have 3 bridges here, 2 roadway bridges and the LRT bridge, which will span through that Glenwood Avenue roadway. So essentially the train will be passing at grade, at that roadway grade, once we're all said and done. We did shift the freight tracks about 25 feet to the north or west to accommodate LRT, and we'll eventually have the trail back in place as well off to the left of this image here. Next slide, please. So I think this is the last image we have for civil construction. This is our piers for the bridge structure that carries over from Royalston area off in the distance, and eventually link into our existing system for the blue-green line at Target Field Station. Maybe I'll pause there, Chair. If there are any questions on the civil construction, I'll be glad to take those.
Any questions? No.
All right. Okay, well, we'll move on to systems. I have a couple of images, mostly around the traction power. This is just going through some testing. We have to go through a lot of rigorous testing on these units. This is the TPSS, the traction power substation. This is actually for our Franklin facility that we are modifying to accommodate the 27 vehicles. Next slide, Jason. And you can see as it's getting in place here, we now have that in place now, and contractors going through some testing. Quite an endeavor to get these units out. Kind of a big box that has a lot of componentry inside it to help power the trains. Next slide, please. So I have a couple of images of the Franklin facility. So we have our contractor LS Black doing modifications to accommodate those 27 vehicles. So part of that work is we're expanding the we're expanding the maintenance area, and up in that kind of bluish area is our new rail control facility that we've had to put upstairs, so to speak, so we could accommodate more room within the building itself. And so we have modifications in the north yard being done, getting that wrapped up. This contract should be done later this year. And I got another image, I think, on this slide presentation. So we also built out some what we call a west runner track. This is just west of our storage area of the unit of the Franklin facility, and this will accommodate to store vehicles outside. You may recall, because we had to take the OMF out of the program from the Hopkins area, we've had to do some modifications to accommodate the additional vehicles for Southwest LRT. So I think that might be the end of my presentation. Maybe I'll pause if there are any questions before I hand it off to John.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jim. And I know, first of all, boy, really seeing all these images, and we all kind of inspect. I kind of look into the Kenilworth Tunnel from the walk from my house, but I know everybody along this line has different views. But to see it all together really shows how far we've come. It's really an incredible project. I know a few of you have to leave for regional council mayors or some other activities, so I want to kind of open it up to any comments or questions we have, at this point.
Chair, this is Jake Spano.
Yeah.
So Jim, quick question. I have two questions, and one of these is sort of more yours, and one of them is maybe more broadly. But I'll start with the one directed to you. Trail reroutes and detours. Mayor Gadd and I have raised this in the past about the desire. I was walking on the North Cedar Lake Trail this morning with a friend, and we were talking about this. And so I'm just wondering if you can give any sort of sense about timing or staging around reopening those detours.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Mayor, I can speak to that. So maybe if I could start from the east, because that's kind of how I think about it. Of course, the area around Glenwood is going to remain to be closed until we get that construction done. We're still hopeful that we can get the Glenwood Bridge, the roadway back into service in 2022, and that's currently what we're looking at, and we'll have to keep you updated as that moves forward. The Kenilworth corridor, we're still working on schedule in terms of when that tunnel can get done. As the chair had spoken earlier, we're in negotiations with the civil contractor on that piece. But as we head from the Kenilworth area over to Beltline, that area is tied so much closely to the tunnel work that we're going to have to kind of wait and see with the Kenilworth tunnel and see how that schedule goes. But from Beltline to Wooddale, we are hopeful that we can open that up toward the end of the year here. And the Wooddale over to essentially Louisiana, almost over to Blake, we have to assess that. That still may not be able to be open yet because of all the work we still have yet to do. We're working closely with our contractor to see what we can open there, but all likelihood we probably won't be able to get that this year. There is a segment from the Hopkins Depot over to 11th that we are looking to be able to open toward the end of the year. We're working with our contractor on that as well. And so we work closely with our contractor to keep this updated. I know there's an interest out there. I have a personal interest, being a biker, that I want to see these trails open as soon as possible. And so we continue to put pressure on that, but just when it's safe to do so and when access is not needed. Given if any of you have been on this corridor, any parts of it, it's very tight in terms of where the contractor can work and where they have to put their materials, where they have to be building things. There's not a lot of access. And so that kind of limits our ability to open up trail access easily or safely.
Great. Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Chair, Jim Hovland again. Join Mayor Spano in just remarking, I guess, and commenting that it is astounding to think about what we're looking at when you think about from whence we came and Jim Alexander, your crew, your predecessor, Mark Furman, all the people that have led us so ably and are putting this line in place, a 16-mile line that helps us create a system for light rail transportation in our region. We've all viewed this, I think, as something that was tremendously important from a global standpoint. If we want to be a player globally, we need to be able to have these kinds of public transportation options in place. And that'll help us with our economic development strategies as well, both from a regional and a state standpoint. So I'm just awestruck by what I'm seeing here in your slide presentation this morning, and so pleased with the work that's been done. And thank you, sincerely for all this wonderful work that you and your team and your contractors have done to get us this far. And I know it'll end up being a tremendous project. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor.
If I could comment, this is Brad Wearsome. I want to really thank you for this presentation and for these updates. Seeing this come alive is very exciting and gratifying. And clearly, I mean, I'm looking over in this office right now at the shovel from the groundbreaking, and the progress that's been made is tremendous. And this really gives me confidence about this project and the future and how important it is for our region. When this was a concept, and the words that Chair Zelli used a bit earlier, this is the largest public works project in the history of Minnesota. That all sounded nice, but I had no appreciation for the significance of what that is. Seeing these slides and seeing the progress made is so helpful and really puts that into context. So again, thank you. And it's an exciting time, and these updates are very, very helpful. So thank you so much.
Right.
Chair Zilli, I have one other question, and I'm not sure where it should fall. It's not really a construction question, but given Jim's historic engagement with this project, I mean, Jim has been there as long as anybody, and I want to be clear, the questions I'm raising about bike trail detours, if Brad or Jim, if either or anyone else got the impression that I'm not enthusiastic, I am totally enthusiastic. I just want to make sure that we can get those spaces open back up to the public as quickly as possible. I do have a question though about, which is a higher level question, which is really about the shift, right, relative to COVID. I have seen, and we have all seen, sort of transit ridership numbers are down, especially, and I can send some of the source material if it's of interest, but especially bus rapid transit ridership, right, into and out of the urban core, really down drastically, right? And so the reason I raise it is because we, of course, are in the middle of approvals around the Beltline area station development. And that location is the site of I think a 500 plus. It's been so long since we talked about these specific numbers that I might have forgotten the details, but 500 stall park and ride, which, as we have been talking with the developer about that, they're really unable to. We've talked about building it in such a way that it could be converted into another use in the future if the park and ride was no longer needed. I understand, because I was part of that approval process, that those spots were required to get FTA approval. My question really is, all of that is sort of table setting for the question, which is, the developer that we're talking to, because of space limitations and budget, can't build a park and ride that could be converted to future other uses, whether it's housing or something else. And so we were really confronted with having to approve this 500 stall park and ride when we are seeing numbers really radically change, and we're also seeing, we're seeing workplace patterns that are evolving, more working from home, obviously, but even I was talking to somebody the other day they have an international company, and they just passed a company policy that every position in their company, irrespective of what office location they're in, they will be hiring from all over the country. And so they said the position may be posted in New York City, but that folks in the Minneapolis office may be actually doing that work, or maybe hiring people in Minneapolis to do that work. So all of this is a way of saying, like, workplace patterns and travel patterns, of course, are changing at a macro level. And my curiosity is, what, if any, flexibility do we have to talk to the FTA about that, about whether or not there's any flexibility associated with park and ride stalls and evaluating the numbers and the need. So sorry for the long-winded question and table setting, but I wanted to make sure there's context for where it's coming from.
And Mayor, those are great questions, and we could, and everybody here in the room, I think, would kind of love the conversation, which we should continue to have about the future of work, the future of transit, its evolving role, which is going to be looking differently, and we were spending a lot of time thinking about that. But the specific question, I think maybe that's either Joan or Jim, you can answer, which is the flexibility that FTA might have now to rethink some of those requirements. So, Jim, can you
Sure.
shed any light on that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Mayor. Well, just to clarify, we have in our program 268 stalls at the Beltline station, and kind of the history on that is we formerly had a surface lot that our civil construction contractor was going to build, and we have since done a change order to remove that. We anticipated that would be the case, so we could work with your developer to accommodate the 268 stalls within whatever they're going to be developing, and so that's in the program right now. And if we were to alter that, we'd certainly have to have conversations with FTA. It does impact our ridership, the expectations of what we had this project promised on when we went to get the FFGA, the full funding grant agreement. So there would have to be conversations on how we proceed with something like that.
Right.
Maybe I could offer, Mayor, maybe we could have discussions with your staff and kind of figure out how we want to navigate that, and if that is something that wants to be pursued. To just, I would say there are some parking challenges on this project. With we had some stalls slated for downtown Hopkins that didn't turn out, and we've been talking with the city of Minnetonka and Hopkins about the parking arrangement at Shady Oak as well, because I know there's been some concern about what's going to look like in the future. Do we need all these stalls? And so I think it's something we'll probably have to maybe pick up at a staff level to talk through, and then maybe if we need to get FTA engaged, we can do that.
Right. And yeah, I mean, the parking facility, the 500 number that was your spots as well as the developments,
Yes,
right?
understood.
So that's the number. But so thank you for just sort of clarifying which portion of that is yours. And I would love to have that conversation, because I think that we are sort of in a place where we need to get a little bit greater clarity around the option. And I ask it just because I know that this is a conversation that will be happening in other locations. And I just want other locations like Shady Oak and everything to sort of benefit from, maybe just sort of, while we are sort of in this process of construction delays, this feels like the right time to just sort of check our compass again and make sure that all the rules that applied when we signed our FFGA are still good ones, and that FTA can still be supportive. So yes, I will do that. I will, and as a matter of fact, I will just sort of take this moment and then I'll stop talking, is to say I will have our new city manager, Kim Keller, who was in a prior meeting. Kim comes to us from Minneapolis and is well versed and aware of the project. I will have her and our development staff reach out to you, Jim, and maybe see if we can get a conversation started. So.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Jake. And that's a welcome question that we should be exploring. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say, since we're kind of talking about, the role of transit and the difference between the express suburban buses, which are down, and trains down, 90%, but they frequent all day, every 10 minutes. Arterial bus rapid transit and light rail have been really continuously carrying people. And when you think about this network, that Southwest Light Rail, Green Line Extension will be one of the backbones, interconnecting with the B line, with other, transit options. We kind of actually do see this as being, very relevant to how people would live their lives, not just commuting for work. So, I think there's more that we're going to be talking about how this all affects our future economy. But to follow up on Mayor Hovland's thought that, this is how we become that attractive, livable place in this metro area. And but having the acknowledgement that transit will probably be different in terms of the park and rides, that's something we should have our eyes wide open to consider. Yeah. Let's see. Let's have time now to hear from John Dow, who's you all know from our Office of Equal Opportunity, give an update on our DBE and workforce performance. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Chair Zelli and management community members. So as you can see in the previous slide, there's been a lot of activity and so much progress has been made. I just wanted to also remind you that this morning we sent out a supplemental handout for the disaggregated DBE and workforce data. So hopefully everyone has received that and has had a chance to also review that supplement. So here we go, slide 32. Our team for OEO has been out in the field conducting site visits and checking in with the DBE firms. And in doing this, we're trying to monitor their progress and also proactively engaging them to address any concerns that they may have while out in the field. Slide 33. And here is the data that we are sharing for the DBE participation as of June 30th. As these, construction continues, the participation on these construction contracts continue to exceed the DBE goals that were assigned. And I also want to note that there were some change orders for these contracts that have been issued. We are working with the prime contractors to monitor and try to increase participation where we can. If nothing, we want to ensure that these levels of DBE participation continue. Next slide, please. Here you can see on the civil contract, it has been holding steady since 20%, has been holding steady at 20% since last year. And the prime contractor for this contract has added a couple of DBEs to their list of subcontractors to assist in the change orders. So there are some increases there. Next slide. For the systems contract, there was a slight dip in participation over the last couple of months. And part of this is due to them needing to get started on the project. So just the different activities that had less DBE participation there. They also shared recently that they had increased their DBE participation by adding a couple of DBEs to their team as well. So that's always something good that we want to hear, that they are bringing in additional DBEs to do work and giving out some of their work to DBEs. Next slide. So for the Franklin project, it is about 75% complete. And we anticipate this level of participation will be maintained moving forward. It's gonna be at either 19 or 18%. So that's just based on what we know about the current DBEs who are working on the project and the scope of work that they are doing. So next slide. And as was requested previously, we are including the DBE data and a table for this. And this table covers all of the construction contracts. One thing to note here, these numbers are showing the disparities within a region and is reflecting some of the disparities in the contracting that we have here too. I believe that the DBE program is a great program, but as we all know, there needs to be more work to increase equity within our region so that these contracts and opportunities are also spread out amongst other small businesses that are looking for these opportunities that can help them and increase equity within our region by bringing more dollars into their communities. Next slide, please. here is a pie chart we've shown previously, but we wanted to update it because of the additional DBEs that were added and the change orders that were added. One thing to note here is that Minnesota continues to be the highest, and it's good to know that these subcontractor dollars are going back to DBE firms and hopefully back into our communities. So this wraps up the DBE portion of the section. Before I jump into the workforce data, I wanted to check to see if there were any questions. If not, I can jump into the next one. 39, please. Okay, so for workforce, we work pretty closely with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights to monitor contracts for compliance and workforce requirements. In this chart, it's the civil contract and their their June participation for women and POCI are higher than the cumulative percentage, and we are going to need more of these to increase the overall participation. One thing to note is that the prime contractor has been working with community-based organizations such as the Minneapolis Urban League to host virtual interviewing sessions for this hiring season for the construction season. And then also, as other projects in the area are winding down, they are transferring workers from those projects over. So one such particular project is the MnDOT 3594 construction project. So as that one's closing down, some of those workers are being transferred over, and they are sharing that they are transferring the women and people of color if possible. Next slide. So this is showing the percentages of participation within each month. And the trend from last year shows construction participation by women increasing all the way into October. So, if there's a repeat of that, we anticipate additional participation increasing all the way into October. So that should help increase the overall numbers. Next slide. For POCI participation, we also anticipate that these numbers will increase as well. Something to note is that LMJV, the prime contractor, shared with us some of their demographics for their recent hires. So 30% of the recent hires were POCI identified individuals. Next slide. And here is the disaggregated data for workforce on the civil contract. I do want to make a correction. If you received some of the handouts, the table at the bottom left in the handouts was shown down as white. Shown as women, not white. So we corrected the slides here. So, as I shared before, these numbers, when you break it down and disaggregate the data, you can see that there is still much more work that needs to be done around diversity and inclusion to increase participation in the construction industry. This is a pretty complex issue because of the many key players involved in hiring, training, and retaining workers in this construction industry. And stakeholders here include employers, unions, government agencies, and the community. So we will continue to have these type of conversations at our DBE and Workforce Advisory Committee. If you have questions or input, we always invite people to, send us questions and comments so that we can have these type of conversations. And we have a variety of stakeholders at that committee that also provide us input. And, we want to try to look for collaborative ways to do things differently and not just business as usual. So next slide, please. This is the Franklin contract, but as we shared previously at the previous CMCs, the system contract has yet to jump into high gear, so we did not create a chart to share for that. However, the data for the systems contract is available in the handout. Altogether, only about 530 hours have been worked to date for that particular contract. So For the Franklin project, the project is winding down. The numbers aren't as high as we would like. However, the Department of Human Rights is reviewing the contractors' good faith efforts to increase participation, and we meet monthly with the prime contractors to review their good faith efforts and workforce achievements. So we're going to continue to work with them and look for different opportunities where we can increase participation. 44, please. All right. So unlike the civil contract, we don't anticipate construction to slow down as the weather cools. This is a vertical construction project, so things will move indoors, and construction indoors will continue to work and continue throughout until the project is completed at the end of the year. Next slide, please. And here is the POCI participation for the Franklin project. It is also continuing on, and we're going to continue to work with them to increase it where possible. Slide 46. So here is the disaggregated data for the Franklin project. This also, if you look at their slide deck handouts, the table also shows women at the bottom left, and we corrected it in the presentation today to show as white. So that should be the correct one, is what you're seeing on your screen. So slide 46. So here, the diversity is a little bit more diverse on this particular project than the civil contract. But one of the challenges that we encountered here is that the workers are self-identifying as unspecified. This is a lot higher than normal, than what we normally see, and this presents a challenge for us, especially when we start trying to disaggregate the data. And we did work with the prime contractor and MDHR, the Department of Human Rights, to talk to the subcontractors to ensure that this was not something that was done in error, that these are workers who are choosing to remain unidentified. So it does pose a challenge. And for MDHR, we're trying to figure out, how else can we be able to grab this data so that we can be able to evaluate it and include it in some of the decisions that are being made, and trying to monitor for compliance. So next slide, please. And then at the DBE and Workforce Advisory Committee, we are not only reviewing achievements on this particular construction project, but we are also looking at ways where we can do things differently or how we can learn from others. So we brought in MnDOT to share some of the successes they found with their negotiated maintenance contracts, and it's helped increase participation from a wide variety of DBEs on that. And they were pretty innovative in using a state statute to increase participation for small businesses. Something else was that we also brought in the MnDOT Results and Transparency Committee to share some of their challenges and successes and lessons learned. And no surprise, they are having some of the same challenges as we are around workforce participation in our region. Something new that we did do was we brought in the San Diego Association of Governments. They are also known as SANDAG, and their organization is very similar to the Met Council in how they do planning and development for the region. And they came and brought in more information about their bench program. And that is a program where they have a pool of small businesses that meet a requirement and register for this bench program. And then they break down the contracts into smaller task orders. Within these task orders, they're able to have the prime contractor select and just give the task to the subcontractor, and without having to go through a long procurement process. So this has been helpful in increasing the amount of opportunities and being able to spread these opportunities across not just a few DBEs who found a niche, but a variety of DBEs. So that was something that was interesting in how they did business. So we are looking at this and trying to learn from this so that in future construction projects that we can incorporate some of these practices into the contract language, and as we are developing other projects such as the Blue Line extension. If you are interested in learning more about any of these discussions or wanting to review and listen, the DBE and Workforce Advisory Committee was recorded, and we have these recordings on the webpage. You can go back and listen to them and get the names of the folks who came and presented if you want to ask them questions. So I think that does it for my presentation. Are there any questions? Or I will give it back to the chair.
Thanks, John, and great presentation. I really appreciate the work you're doing with the various advisory committees, especially the advisory committee that you meet with regularly. That's a pretty broad group of stakeholders. I think that also, as difficult as data can be, having this differentiated kind of spreadsheets and kind of presentations, which I know this CMC has requested, is really helpful to see, and it also shows that we actually are falling behind on both women and people of color, and I could see knowing that what MnDOT's been doing, and I'm familiar with that work. Sometimes it depends what other projects are going on, and I suspect when 35 and 94 closes out in the next few weeks, we might have an opportunity to kind of attract some more diverse workforce on this project. So that's all good news. I'll open it up. Does anybody have any questions, comments, discussion on this report?
Chair Zelli, this is Jason Gadd, and I do have a question for John, kind of related to the overall workforce and what we've been seeing in the overall labor industry, with the shortage of workers out there, or people who are applying for positions. Have you seen that within the construction along this line, or are they struggling to find people?
Mr. Chair, as we are doing these construction visits out into the field, we are talking to some of the construction workers out there. It's been depending on the contractor, it's been pretty different, and the type of work that they're doing, it varies. For example, some of the rail contractors, we see them bringing in workers from outside of the state to come do the work. And for them, that's kind of a normal practice. And, of course, our goal is to get folks within our region to work on these construction projects. And I think, from talking to the contractors, there is some challenges there where people jump into the field and then they aren't able to be retained. And from year to year, it also varies because those folks that are the last to be brought on to construction projects, and then the first to be laid off when the construction projects slow down, they aren't able to build up the experience and the, accumulate the hours needed to be able to receive the pension and retire at the normal rates when retirement time comes. And one particular story we got was there was a worker who was about 52 years old, and he's been doing labor work for over 25 years, and he's seen some of his colleagues retire at 52, and when he looks at his position, he's got to work 6 more years before he can retire. And the laborer's work is very hard, especially at the age of 56. Your body's going to break down at some point. And for him, that being a person of color, he's always last one to get on, first one to get off, not able to be retained from one season to the next. He hasn't been able to build up the amount of experience to retire on time. And this is one of the very impactful ways that we are seeing, what happens when we don't have employers who retain and hold on to women and people of color in the industry onto the core teams, because I think that that's really where we're going to make the impact. But regarding hiring, the contractors are saying that they're reaching out to the unions, following the normal processes, and the union benches are either clear or the folks on there don't have the qualifications needed for the particular roles.
Great question, Mayor. And, you know, this whole issue of workforce and the need for workforce training, and as we try to attract and develop careers, we need to show models that there is a career in this construction area. And that seems to be a recurring challenge that we just need to be continuing to be mindful of. Commissioner Gotel.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to follow up with just a little bit of insight on that because I have had conversations with women who are in what I would call non-traditional roles within our unions. They too are having problem trying to get their hours in specifically so that they can retire. They don't get hired and brought on enough. They don't get more opportunities to train so that they have higher skill sets. We probably really need to work with our unions at some point to make them more viable and find a different path forward for some of these folks so that they can, because that is really hard work. The other thing is I was really interesting to hear about disaggregating contracts. That is something that Hennepin County has a lot of experience with. When we wanted to attract more small and Black-owned businesses or minority-owned businesses, we realized that when we had lots of conversations, we needed to disaggregate because it was too big for different companies to chew off. We also needed to find out that we had to pay within 30 days. They have cash flow issues. They have issues of meeting the criteria of insurance. So that needs to be included when you pay them. There's a lot of barriers for these small businesses. And if we want them to be successful, then we have to be willing to meet them in places that impact their businesses. And so that has worked for us and it's been very successful.
Thank you for that comment. And I know that, John, you've been working with MnDOT, which I'm familiar with, but I know Lisa Cerny's in this room, and I would suggest we kind of connect with Hennepin County and see kind of how that's working, that splitting up contracts into smaller amounts and also meeting these subs in ways that can be helpful. Any other comments, thoughts? All right, well, the clock is ticking, and I see Sophia Guinness here is going to give us a little update on our communications and outreach. Welcome, Sophia.
Thank you, Chair, committee members. I'm Sophia Guinness, our Manager of Public Involvement, and I have a short update on our outreach activities. As you saw earlier in the presentation, there's been a lot of construction and some great milestones reached. And so with that, there's been a lot of outreach, both proactive and reactive as things emerge on our construction site. So starting out, pictured, we have Nikongo featured here at the Hopkins Raspberry Festival. It's a little hard to see in the picture, but in addition to general project information, who is also supporting our historic preservation efforts about the historic district potentially in downtown Hopkins. And so being out there with information and continuing to get the word out as part of our commitments in our environmental process. So as we move forward, we both have our strong communications plan as well as our ongoing outreach efforts. So we continue to do our construction updates. They're sent weekly or bi-weekly. A lot of subscribers, a lot of open rates. I also get pings of all the people that forward the construction updates to each other and then talk about what we're doing. So we know people rely on that. The outreach coordinators also have the communications that they send specifically. And with that, just those property owning meetings and checking in with people that are immediately adjacent to the corridor take up a lot of the team's time, and the team really focuses on those things. We also have continued to meet either monthly or quarterly, depending on the community, with our construction information work groups. They're very valuable. We have a lot of conversation about how construction's going, what people are seeing in the field, small adjustments that we can make. And we also have continued to do corridor tours, which has helped the broader public really see the complexity of the work that we're doing on the project. I had the distinct pleasure of taking a group of about 20 folks to our Southwest station over this past weekend, and I just got the feedback that it really helped people understand what's going on. People love to kind of see the construction up close. It was an active job site that day. So, kind of staying away from the middle of the activities, but just seeing people work was really, really interesting. You almost have to drag people off of site at the end because it is like wandering around and seeing things. So those continue to also be very valuable. And, we were able to stay masked, and there's a little bit of room for social distancing. So assuming numbers stay okay, we'd hope to do one more round in the fall with that. But overall, the team is really present and available out in the corridor, both to our immediate neighbors and to the public, to really show this great project that we're developing and the milestones that we're hitting. And that's what I have for all of you today.
Thanks, Sophia, and really hats off to your outreach team. I know you're in a lot of places, and honestly, this is such a large project, which we've been describing, but it's disruptive, particularly if you're living or working nearby, and I certainly will be a testimony to that. But boy, having participated a little bit in the Minneapolis communications group, your team is doing an amazing job, and frankly, I've had neighbors who say, I hate the project. I really love that outreach team. I can trust them. So that says a lot, and I think you and your team represent this project really well. And in fact, I remember going on a tour with somebody who was particularly upset about all the sounds of construction. As much as we try to mitigate it, it happens. And as upset as they were after the tour, they were beaming and saying, "Oh my God, that is awesome!" So, I think these tours are really valuable, not just in understanding the project, but also seeing that the level of work and professionalism to do something like this, you only got to see up front. And I know that all of you have been having the opportunity for tours, and maybe a series of tours, because it's hard to take in the whole 14 miles in one shot. But thank you again for arranging that, and I second the idea of tours. So is there any questions, comments, feedback for Sophia or anything we've heard today? Well, the tours and the outreach and the kind of the interaction we have with everybody here will continue. Thanks everybody for coming. I know that the next full CMC meeting will be Wednesday, December 1st, so you can kind of mark your calendar. But obviously, you don't need to wait quarterly for getting good information and staying connected to updates, and certainly track us on social media. And if you ever have a question, you know how to find Jim, you know how to find me, you know how to find Sophia. And with that, any other closing thoughts or comments? It's great to see all of you, and I should acknowledge those that have joined us after we started our introductions. And I'm looking at you, Will. Great to see you here. I know you've been part of this project from the very beginning, so I know all of us have been living through the various phases. Any thoughts, questions? Well, somebody told me this is one of the top 10 days to be in Minnesota, so we'll give you a few minutes to enjoy it. So enjoy the day, stay positive. We're going to build this thing, and it's going to be great. So great to see all of you, and we'll see you soon. Thanks. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.